Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's xBundok here, and today we have a blue dragon that we're going to work on. And originally this was going to be a paint with me kind of video. Might turn into a little bit more of an attempted motivational speech, I guess. So my plan for this guy is to do two different sets of airbrushing, one with the tan coloring on the wings and the chest, and one with the blue for everything else. So these are the colors that we're using for the wings and the chest plates, and I will show you the blues I end up using later on for the rest of the body. And so let's get started here. For airbrushing, I always mix and then test the brush on the paper, as you can see with all the other paper brush strokes in the back. Never forget your little cap for the top of the pot when you're turning it sideways, otherwise everything's going to spill out. It ends up looking okay. That's all I'll say. So we end up doing a lot of attempted correction with this dragon. At the end of the airbrushing, you'll see I'm not very unhappy with it. There's a lot of things I like about it. However, there's a good bit of overspray, and that's all right. I wasn't expecting it to be perfect. It's actually my first time trying to get two different tones done with the airbrush, and so it was my first time masking a figure. Learned a little bit. I'll figure out how to work it in the future. I'm still really happy with just being able to get base coats of paint on with an airbrush. I mean, one of the best investments made so far. And again, thank you to my family for getting it for me for my birthday. It was definitely a wanted present, and it's not being ignored. You'll see here I did do the ridge spines on the back. That was before I double checked the picture and saw that those were supposed to be blue. So we end up going over those later on. So what you'll see is I actually did that first coat with the airbrush, Army Painter airbrush bone coloring, and then I'm going to go over with my ghost white, which I ended up, that's an MSP color, and I end up thinning it out, and so that'll be on the edges of the wings. You can see I do my little test on the wall there. I really like how the gradient ended up turning out, even though you'll see at the end of the video, it's not on the final piece, and we will explain why when we get there. So the one other thing I really wanted to test in this video is I see a lot of folks in the mini painting Reddit, which if you didn't know, there is a Reddit for miniature painting because there's a Reddit for everything. Folks recommend using silly putty for masking. Now, that might be helpful for something that is smaller, or not necessarily something that's smaller, but a smaller area you're trying to mask, or something that's a bit more square, maybe robotic, like when it comes to Warhammer or Battletech, something like that. So I'm just going to say, I think I know why this younger generation is angry, because once you see how much silly putty is in the silly putty eggs, now granted this is an off-brand, so maybe the name brand's a little different. Man, you're ripping these kids off and they're only like 5 or 6. There is not a lot of toy in there at all. So I wanted to test that in this video. I didn't have enough for what I wanted to mask, and there wasn't a small section that I really would have used it for, except maybe his main horn on the front. So we might have to do that in a later video, just to test, you know, that versus masking fluid versus tape. So yeah, here you go. Again, I went to the store, all they had was the off-brand, and they only had one, which I figured the off-brand would probably still function the same as the regular. But you can see through the silhouette of the eggs just how much is in here, and there's like none. It's maybe like a quarter's diameter worth in both of them. So ended up just not being worth it for this video. All right, so we've got all of our masking tape on, so we're gonna go over this guy with the blue. Now, I have good coverage with the tape. I know some of the borders I didn't have great. as in they weren't straight along the border, and I figured I could do a touch up with the brush later. I realized I didn't have it stuck down all the way in some portions, which is probably why I got some overspray, just from the force of the airbrush pushing the tape up. Now the Ritterlich blue and the Dragon blue and the light blue are primarily what I'm going to end up using, just because I'm a sucker for the Ritterlich blue. I have a whole bunch of others on the side. I didn't really touch them that much, but whenever I'm going into something that is essentially one color, like the chromatic dragons, I try to have as many of my shades of one color on hand as possible, just because I don't know necessarily at the start what I'm going to want to do. But while I'm working, I want to make sure I have everything on hand in case I just want to shuffle around a bit. So we're going to get all of this blue layered on here, and then we'll pull up the tape and you'll see kind of what I was talking about with that overspray. All right, so you can see here, there's a little bit on the underside of the wings, not a ton, and that's workable, but you can see that big solid chunk there. That's the worst one on that left wing. There's a little bit on the right, but not as much. And my thinking was, okay, so on the designs for the blue dragons, they have blue spots on the whitish tan portion of the wings. So, you know, maybe I'll incorporate it with that, or I'll just do a glaze over it and try to work on it. Literally everything I did to try and rectify it just did not work out. So the next steps is we're going to do a little bit of detailing on the blue for this dragon, which includes just adding some lighter tones, so the blue spines on the back, as well as I got a couple of contrast paints to play around with. So I do have a blue contrast that I use to add a little bit of depth, and then some lighter dry brushing. I didn't record all that because they're kind of the usual stages I show you guys, and I feel like eventually you'll kind of get bored of seeing the same thing over and over. And then we end up moving on to the wings. Now, here's where I'm going to get into my little standard speech, so whatever's going on in the background, feel free to watch it, you know? If you hate your miniature, if you hate the way it's coming out, if you absolutely dislike how it looks, you kind of have two options. One is you keep painting, you know, make sure your layers are drying in between and just keep working on it and get it back to where you want. And two is set it aside, take a break, and come back to it once you're a little less frustrated. Personally, just tossing it, getting rid of it, not an option, okay? You can prime over it again, all white, and start from the top. I don't like doing that just because of layers of paint, but don't just get rid of it. Don't just toss it. Don't. While I was working on this, 100%, I got to a point where I'm like, oh my God, it's only a $15 model. I'm just gonna get another one. I'm done with this. I'm not keeping this one. Don't let it win. Don't let the dragons beat you down. Don't let whatever block or problem you're having get in your way, because once you start that habit, you're not going to stop, and you're going to have so much that you either just tossed or you have sitting there that you're ignoring at the bottom of a box in a pile that, you know, you'll end up selling to somebody for ridiculously cheap because you don't want them sitting on the shelf anymore. Don't let it get the best of you. Just take a break, take a breather, step away, come back to it, or, you know, look through your stock, look through your paints, like, okay, so this isn't going to work, this isn't going to work. Instead of making it accurate to the book, what do I want it to look like? So that's kind of what happened when I was working. So I showed, there's going to be coming up a video of how I'm painting the spots on. Once the spots were on, I really didn't like blue spots on tan. I thought it looked just bad. I'm not trying to bash the design in the monster manual or by Wizards of the Coast or what have you at all, but I was not fond of it. So I'm like, okay, well, let's do a little bit of a glaze over it, take some of the saturation out. So there's still spots there, but they're not as bold. Nope, still didn't like it. Really just did not enjoy it. So after that, I'm like, screw it, we'll just paint over it with the same colors. And then I sat there and I weighed if I wanted to try and mask the blue tines and then just go back in and airbrush the wings all over again, which I went against just because I didn't want to have any more masking errors. And it was also getting a little bit later in the day, and I try to be a good upstairs apartment neighbor and not have, you know, the airbrush running at 8 or 9 at night. That's just not cool. So my idea, which I'm sure all of you are kind of expecting, you know, I enjoy my Turbo Dork paints where you can add the shimmer effect and things like that. I'm like, okay, cool. And the blue one even needs a white background to be layered on. So this is perfect. We'll get a blue shimmer, work out. Paint was dry. So the carrier fluid of it was fine, but all of the actual blue pigment was completely solidified at the bottom of the bottle. So that wasn't going to work out either. So I used some of the purple shimmer from Turbo Dork that I had, which the only problem with that is it wants a black background. So you'll see at the end of the video, it kind of ends up looking a bit more canvasy. It looks weathered, which I think kind of works. I'm not 100% sold on it yet, but for me, it's better than the spots. But it's definitely, you can see that I was overworking the sections. I was getting frustrated, so I just kept trying to paint over, but I wasn't waiting until the paint was dry. You can absolutely see where it looks kind of chunky, and 100% I could have just tossed all this footage and be like, oh, well, no, I want them to think that I don't have these problems, that's ridiculous. Okay. Amateur painting channel, obviously, from the quality. Let's be real here. But B, what kind of person would I be if I'm just like, oh yeah, everything I paint I love and it ends up perfect? And no, that's not the case. And I wouldn't want somebody watching to think, oh, well, why does it always work out for them, but I can't get this right, or I can't get that right, or why am I having issues when nobody else is? Everybody has issues. I'm sure even the big name guys still have stuff that they're severely unhappy with, and hopefully they don't just toss it. I'm sure they keep working on it. If any of you are watching, feel free to comment on that input, but I highly doubt you're here. If you are, thank you. I feel complimented. But that's kind of what this video ends up breaking down to, is when literally everything just does not line up or keeps going wrong or isn't how you want it to be. That happens. It happens from time to time. It's okay. All that told me is I now get to go to the gaming store at some point in the near future and buy a whole bunch of new paint, since apparently some of it's dry. That's the benefit to this, look on the good sides. And you always learn what you can do to fix it or change it. There's always an opportunity to see how you can better whatever you're working on. And I think that's what I want folks to take away from it, is just keep going, accept what it is, but also accept that it can change, and just keep on keeping on with it, and eventually you'll get there. All right, so this is my spot technique. Even though I didn't like how it ended up looking color-wise on this figure, I still kind of want to show you guys this, just because I do like how it looks on other things in different color palettes. So what I do is I like feathered spots when I'm thinking about it. Like, usually you're not having a solid round spot on something, be it fur or scaling or texture. It's going to be feathered out a little bit. So I start kind of trying to outline where I would want it in a lighter tone. So this is a light blue. So on that tan, it pops up, and it can also be used to kind of blend in a little bit. Now, when I was looking at the diagrams, they had bold blue spots. It's the same color as their scale tone. I know there's a little bit of a glare in here. I will move the light in a little bit. I just didn't realize you guys had a glare right on the spot since it's wet paint. So I pull the paint into the spot. So outside in, so that on the next later step, so here's our darker shade, just to add a little bit of depth to it. And then I'm going to get that light shade that's close to the same tone as the wing. So that tan and white, I think I had a linen white and one of the bone shades that I have to kind of blend it in. So I'm going to pull those outside in, so it's blended, it's lighter, it feels a bit more integrated with that. Now, like I said, between the cream color and the blue, I just feel like it didn't work great. I haven't had an issue with this technique where it's something like a warm base, like a natural warm base, like an orange or like a mustard yellow with browns and blacks. So if you think, big cat kind of tonalities. I also think it works if you're keeping a lot of cool colors together, or natural colors. This can also work if you're trying to do terrain and have scattered terrain and have something like a leaf pile or something like that. You can have your I'd say like yellow-green backgrounds, and if you have a darker green patch or like a greenish brown, or even an autumnal thing where it's orangish yellow, that also works. This technique works for that too. But when it came down to this base color with the blue, I mean, I did not like how it was coming out at all. I had a couple of different, like I had a large spot and some smaller spots, and I didn't make it symmetrical. I wanted to feel a bit more natural and, you know, asymmetrical on the figure, so it seemed less forced, less crafted. Even then, and we'll have a picture here shortly, I just wasn't happy with the result. So that's why I said, you know, I just went over it, and then we just went down that rabbit hole of nothing working out. So you just watched the glaze portion that I did to try and lower the opacity on those spots. And again, didn't like that. Went back over with white, and then you'll see here my plan to go over it with the blue Turbo Dork, which is completely dry. And so, lessons learned, just keep working at it. Eventually you'll get something you like. If not, again, like I said, prime over it and get back working, but don't just toss it. Don't give up completely. You'll get there. So there's still a lot of work I want to do on this model. I'll have you see some of my pictures here at the end. There's a lot that I still need to do to it. I need to add a lot more shading to a whole bunch of parts. Detailing, you'll see here, I still don't have the teeth on him done or things like that. Maybe a little bit of edge highlighting. And then I'll figure out what I want to do any further with the wings, both on the top side and the other underside. But there are things I like about this. I think this is some of the best dry brushing I've done so far. I'm starting to learn how to do that better. And I really like how the underbelly scales came out. So that's what I'll say is, even if there's something that you absolutely hate about a piece, keep working at it, because you will find something you enjoy in it, and you won't want to lose what you enjoy with it. So you'll fix whatever you have problems with, and you may be the only one to see your problems. So thanks again for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if you want to come back for more, and until next time, take care.